So the four problems you did yesterday should be in front of you, and these should be the answers that match. What we're going to do is we're going to add the domain and range to these four graphs. Okay, so this was number 12. This is what your picture should look like from the equations. And the domain and range, if you remember when we were looking at number lines, it was like a scanner from left to right. Okay, so that's what we're going to do with the domain. So you want to imagine that you have a scanner, okay, like a light scanner, that's starting over here, and it's just going to slide to the right, like this. Okay, so is there a negative infinity, like an arrow pointing forever to the left? Right here? Okay. If you would have that extend forever and ever, it would go forever to negative infinity, right? It's off, pointing off to the left a little bit. Okay. So that's going to be our first thing that we come to. Okay. We know it's going to go negative infinity. Now what we're doing is we're looking for gaps in the graph. Okay. So this blue arrow up here at the top goes to negative infinity, and as we're scanning, it stops right here at what value? -4, right? Yes, we all agree? And then there's this gap in the graph from here to here. There's no graph there at all as we're scanning from left to right. Okay, so we know that this is going to stop at -4, and it's going to be a square bracket. How come? Because it's a closed circle up here at the top. Okay? All right, so then there's this gap. Now, when there was a gap, we put a capital U there in between. And then the graph picks up again right here at what value? At 0. This one's a round parenthesis because it's an open circle. Okay, so we're scanning. We're right here. We're moving in this direction. The graph keeps going, and then it looks like it stops at 3. But is there a gap in the graph as we scan? No, because the graph picks up again up here, and it keeps going forever until infinity. Okay, so let's double check that we got that. Okay, questions? Okay, range tends to be a little bit more difficult for kids for some reason, but it's really the same idea. You're starting at the bottom and you're scanning up. So are there any arrows that point forever to negative infinity? No, so we're not going to start with negative infinity. What's the first thing we hit?
0.
Right here at 0. Okay, so we start with 0, open circle because it's an, or a parenthesis because it's an open circle. Okay, again, we're looking for gaps, so we're scanning. The graph stops at 3. This one is a square bracket. Okay, then there's this gap right here. Okay, from 3 all the way up to 8. Okay, so we need to have capital U because there's a gap there. And then the graph picks up again, like I said, at 8. Now, whenever you have a horizontal line and it's the only number that's there, you always just have it all by itself in square brackets. Even though there's an open circle on 8, all of these values over here to the right basically compensate for that one tiny open circle. Okay, so when a number is all by itself, you have it in square brackets. And then we keep scanning up. Okay, so we've been scanning up this whole time. Then there's another gap, and it picks up again at what value?
11.
Is that 11? Look on your graphs. Was it at 11 or 12? Is that 12? Okay. There was a gap. It picked up again at 12, and it goes on forever up towards the sky, forever to infinity. Okay. Nope, I guess it was 11. Whatever. Questions on that? We're going to try this 3 more times with your other 3 graphs so that you get used to this. All right, let's look at this one. We're looking at a scanner from left to right. So do we have one that points at negative infinity? This one down here at the bottom points forever to the left. So we know we're going to start with negative infinity. Now we're looking for gaps in the graph. Okay, so we're scanning. It looks like it ends right here. Does it pick up again up above? Is there a gap in the graph if we were scanning it? No, okay, because it looks like it ends right here, but it picks up again up here and it keeps going. So the graph keeps going, going, going. Is there a gap now? Yes, okay, so we know it's going to stop at 2. But it doesn't pick up again at 2 at the bottom, so we do have to separate it with capital U. Okay, and then it picks up again at what number? At 4, and it goes to infinity. Okay, let's scan from the bottom up. Now there's 2 of them that are pointing at negative infinity. That's fine. We for sure know that it's going to start with negative infinity. Okay, so we're again looking for gaps. So we're scanning, we're scanning. It doesn't stop here, does it? No, there's still a graph over here on the right. So we're scanning, and it really stops at -7. Is that what that is? Round parenthesis, because it's an open circle. And then there's this gap right here as we scan upwards, all the way up to 5. Okay, and that's another one where it's all by itself, so it's square brackets. We're looking for where the graph is drawn. Okay, let's do the next one. All right, we'll start on the left, and we'll scan this way. Okay, do we have a negative infinity? Yep, down here at the bottom. So we're scanning. It looks like it stops here, but the graph picks up again right here, and we keep scanning this way. So we're scanning, we're scanning, we're scanning. Is there a gap here? No? We keep going, we keep going. It's just negative. Whoa, that was a struggle. Negative infinity to infinity. There's no gaps anywhere in the graph when you scan left to right. Okay. Some of you still have a confused look on your face, so I'm going to get a yardstick here. It might help. Those of you watching online won't be able to really see what I'm doing, but so if you have this yardstick, and we have it down here at the bottom of the screen, and we're just scanning and looking for gaps in the graph. Okay, so this arrow right here is pointing forever to negative infinity. So we know for sure that the range is going to start here. Okay, we're looking for where the graph stops. Right here? What's that? -10. And that's an open circle. Then there's a gap. Okay, so we're scanning, and then we see this gap right here at -10, and it doesn't start again until -6. Now this is an interesting situation because we have this graph, this diagonal one that's going up to the right, that covers from -6 up until 2, and then we have this one over here that's also in that range. Okay, the range and the domain, you're just saying where the graph exists. So on the y values, the graph goes from -infinity to -10, then there's a break, and then the graph is drawn from -6 to 2, which covers both of those. Okay? We're going to try one more with domain and range. Think of it like scanning from left to right. So now we're starting over here. We've got the yardstick. What's the first thing? Yep, -infinity up until and there's a gap. Okay, so now there's this gap from right here all the way to right there. So we don't have anything there. That's why that capital U is over there. So it picks up again at -1 with a square bracket, and it goes all the way to, what is that? I think that's 5. And then there's another gap that goes from here to here, picks up again at 7 and goes to infinity. So you're looking where the graph is drawn. That's what the domain and range is. All right, let's look at range. Do we have a negative infinity? No, there's no arrow pointing down. Okay, where's the first time the graph is drawn? As we scan up, the first time we see that green ink is at -4. Okay, and then we're looking for gaps. Are there gaps anywhere here, anywhere here, anywhere here? No. Okay, so then it just goes to infinity. Pretend that is an infinity sign. We've got one example left where we're actually going to write what the equations are of these, which is what you're going to do in your homework. Questions on this? Okay, so this is what I'm going to ask you to do on the test as well. I'm going to give you a picture, looks something like this, and ask you to write what the 3 equations are. Okay, so it's working backwards from what we were doing yesterday. So we know we're going to have 3 equations. Okay, and we're going to just start on the left, and then we'll go to the middle one, and then we'll do the one on the right. Do it in order, okay? So we have to write these equations of these lines, and they're all lines, okay? So y equals mx plus b. That's what we're thinking. So we need the slope and we need the y-intercept. So looking at this one, this first line right here, what is the slope of this line? It goes up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, over and over. Okay, so we know that it's going to be 1x, or just x. What's the y-intercept? Where are you getting 4? Does it currently cross through the y-axis? No, but if it did, and we kept extending that line, do you see where it would cross through at 4? Okay, that's what you need to be doing when you're writing these equations, is imagine that the entire line is drawn. Okay, now we need the range of where this is graphed. So we're looking at x values here, so it's like doing the domain or scanning. Okay, so we only graphed this line when x was less than what? We're looking right here. We only graphed the line when x was less than -2. Why don't I have a line underneath this less than? Yeah, it's an open circle, so we need to have that just less than. Okay. Now, when it's the one where there's not arrows on it, which, by the way, a lot of you, when you were showing me your homework yesterday, you put arrows on everything. You put arrows on the middle one, and you put arrows on these. You only put arrows in the directions where it's less than or greater than. The middle one, when there's a number here and a number here, that's telling you that x is only in between those 2 numbers. Okay, it doesn't go on forever. Okay, so make sure your arrows are on the right spot. Okay, so we need to figure out which x values this is graphed along. What is it in between? What 2 numbers? -2 all the way up to 3. So we go -2 all the way up to 3. Now the direction that these go, they will always be less than signs. Okay, both of these are filled in, so there's going to be a less than or equal to sign surrounding the x. Okay, what's the equation of a horizontal line that goes through right here?
-3?
Yep. Okay, those horizontal lines, it's just the number that it's going through on the y-axis. So I want to get that. Okay, this next one.
Yep. Shelby. What? Go to the library. All right.
Okay, right here, We've got an equation of a line that we need to draw right here. Okay, so we're looking on the right. Okay, now this one, it's kind of hard to see where it would cross through on the y-axis. Okay, so we'll get there in a second. But we can find the slope. Okay, so we know this point right here, and it goes through this point right here. So what's the slope of that line? Rise over run, what would it be? It's going to go down 2 over 1. Okay, so that's negative 2x, and we have to figure out what the y-intercept is. Okay, so here's how we do this. This is the quicker way to do this. So we know the slope already. We don't know b. Remember doing this? Where can we find an x and a y? Any of the points on the line. Okay, maybe the one with the circle on it right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 4, 6. Okay, so we go 6, 4, multiply those. We get 14. Okay, it's a lot easier to do that than to extend your graph all the way up 14 units tall. So we know this is going to be negative 2x plus 14. Well, what values did we graph it on? Only when x was greater than what? 4. Okay, we started graphing right here and we went forever this way. So when x was greater than 4 is the only spot that we graphed that line. Questions? Okay, so the homework is going to be 4 pictures where you're going to write this part of it, the equations and the where you're going to be graphing it, the domain. Okay?